let's start this webinar off. I want to thank everyone for being here. This is obviously June 20th. We're here with Fathom Nickel. My name is Matthew Mickleborough. I am the IR for Fathom, and joining me here, of course, is Ian Fraser, CEO and VPX of Fathom Nickel. And just maybe a couple of just very standard disclaimers, and there will be, the written disclaimer will be available as well. But let's just, as always, be aware that there's going to be forward-looking statements involved here. Blue sky comments will be had. This is also going to be recorded, right? So I do encourage people, please, if you have questions, get them into the chat. We're hoping to load kind of the back half of this to be just pure investor questions. Yeah, so please get your questions in. A lot of it's already built around questions that I got in ahead of time, so thank you for that. And this is where I said this on our last webinar as well, that just be aware of my own kind of personal disclaimer here that, I'm kind of wearing two hats here. I am their head of IR and business development for Fathom Nickel, but I also run a podcast and writing service called Junior Resource Investing. And obviously there's a clear conflict of interest there, right? So I just want people to be aware of that before we get going. Yeah, so we're here for a webinar. Obviously there's a lot to talk about, and kind of a funny coincidence of timing that, this was just planned prior to our southern neighbors, who I'm sure we're all aware of, right, came out with some pretty ridiculous gold assays that we will no doubt be talking about, because we would be fools not to. But this is also just meant to be a bit of just a company intro at this point, I think, for some people that are new potentially, and then, also just talking about the news that we have, right? So I guess maybe without going too far out into the weeds at this point, I will turn it over to Ian. Ian, again, like, we will get to the news update today of the permitting, but let's talk about just Fathom Nickel, I guess, right? Let's assume that there's maybe a few people in here who are coming here from Ramp and unfamiliar with who we are. It's kind of a funny thing that, this nickel story overlapped with the gold story all of a sudden. So maybe, do you just want to introduce people to Fathom Nickel, our projects, the history of those projects, the strength of the jurisdiction that we're in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks, Matthew. And yeah, thanks for all those who are attending. Yeah, Fathom Nickel, two Saskatchewan-based properties, both with history. The Albert Lake project, we launched an IPO in the spring of 2021, and it was on the on the shoulders, if you will, of the Albert Lake project, this 90,000 hectares that you see in the dark color. Importantly, host to the historic Rottenstone mine, where production in 1965 through 1969 produced, some of the highest grade nickel copper PGE, platinum group element grades ever produced in Canada. And one could stretch that out, maybe even globally. These really were spectacular grades, and our exploration thesis was this isolated occurrence does not occur in isolation. We have since proven that there's more of this style of mineralization. We've been successful discovering another trend that we call the Bay Island Trend, which is 500 meters west-northwest. Same mineralization, albeit a little bit lower grade. And we're very, very focused in an area to the south of the historic Rottenstone mine, an area that we're going to call we call it the Trombley-Olson Nic-5. Here we have a fantastic, very, very robust multi-element soil geochemical anomaly. We're getting, over a gram combined platinum, palladium plus gold in individual soil samples. And with our drilling efforts to date, we are getting very close to discovering more of this Rottenstone type mineralization, and I think we will be successful in defining another Rottenstone-like body. But importantly, it's going to be bigger than the 50,000 tons that have essentially been known about since 1929. Second project, Goshager Lake. It's roughly 60 kilometers straight south. Here too, some work that was done 1966, 1967 to find a nickel copper resource of 4.3 million tons at a grade of 0.3% nickel. And they didn't include cobalt in that calculation. And we have since proven with our drilling efforts that there is a substantial cobalt component to this style of mineralization. And importantly, with our drilling and our understanding of the geometry and the dynamics of the Goshager Lake project, we are now drilling it in such a way that we are realizing that there are vertical controls, not only to the lithology, but to the higher grade mineralization that we've been intersecting. And historically, they were drilling vertical drill holes, and I think this is why they potentially missed out on the higher grades component within this disseminated shell. And importantly, we're recognizing now that there is a source that we have not yet discovered, that is the impetus behind these high-grade chutes, veins of semi-massive to massive sulfides that we've been very, very successful at intersecting since drilling started in February of 2023. Let me touch a little bit on the wonderful province of Saskatchewan, consistently ranked as one of the better jurisdictions in the world to explore. We announced this morning that we got our permit. This is an additional permit. We're working under a permit presently at Goshager Lake, but this gives us another 2-year pathway to continue our exploration efforts. The process of application, the process of consultation, a word that keeps getting brought up in a lot of the meetings that I attend in La Ronge and Stanley Mission, is collaborating. And so I think this has all been a very, very positive step, process, and I very much look forward to continue these very, very good, at least I like to think they're very, very good relationships and rapport that we've established with the wonderful people in northern Saskatchewan. Anything else as an intro there, Matt?
Well, maybe I'll hop in here. Ian is classically humble, right? He's not a salesman, which I think speaks to as a testament to his character. I'll do the sales pitch here instead, I guess, and I'll get down in the mud. No, if you're looking for someone who knows this land package, Ian's your guy. He's been working what was then called Rottenstone, now known as Albert Lake. I mean, off and on since the 90s, and this has been a project where he truly believed that previous operators did not understand what was going on, and did not, maybe, it was always a peripheral project for these previous operators, and Ian kind of, like I say, for a quarter of a century now, has slowly and agonizingly sort of mastered this area, or continues to achieve mastery of this area. So if you're looking for someone who knows this land, that you're looking at him right there with, and I guess maybe another comment just on the size of this, you see 90,000 hectares. I saw someone on CEO said that, Albert Lake is larger than New York City, which I thought was kind of it's a really effective sort of comparison, right? So kudos to whoever came up with that one. But, we were here first, right? You see, and we'll get to this in a later point of this conversation, where there's been a land rush, that the claims that Mars Mineral Acquisition, whatever system it is, I'm not sure what the acronym is, but the Saskatchewan Mineral Claims Process, since RAMP had their huge hit, which is, of course, I mean, that's a company defining hit there if it continues on. There's been a huge land grab, and maybe we want people to understand that, this is not a sort of desperation package. This is something that we've had for years and years and years, right? And the southern tip of this roughly inverted triangle that you see at Albert Lake is where RAMP is, for people that are kind of tuning in from the RAMP exposure. Otherwise, yeah, Saskatchewan top 3. I mean, one of the lowest royalty rates in the world, even creates a very low bar for economic viability for projects. And also, I mean, I think, Ian, do you want to discuss just regional endowment? I mean, I'm a Saskatchewan guy, so I'm biased, but I really believe that the Canadian Shield in Saskatchewan is sort of criminally underexplored. Ian, as an actual geologist, do you just want to speak on that a bit?
That's a really good point, Matthew. Part of our Fathom message, if you will, is, why do things stop at the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border? Folks that have been following the story, or I've heard us talk about the Trans-Hudson orogeny, and this geologic event that occurred 1.8 billion years ago, and in the process, the timing was such and the setting was such that the Thompson Nickel Belt was forming, which is just east of the Manitoba-Saskatchewan border, and further along across Hudson's Bay, the Trans-Hudson orogeny is still present in the northern part of Quebec, and this is where Glencore's operations are. So, knowing that there was high-grade nickel known about since 1929 at Rottenstone, and then this, Goshager Lake deposit, which I'm convinced is going to develop into something quite significant. This is all going on 1.8 billion years ago, and even this past week, a colleague of mine, I said, what is the timing of the Snow Lake VMS mineralization relative to the Thompson Nickel Belt? And well, they're essentially the same. And so you've got this VMS occurring adjacent to the Thompson Nickel Belt in Manitoba. And, VMS is starting to show its head in Saskatchewan. McIlvenny Bay's had some success. We've got a VMS occurrence right on our own Goshager Lake project. And again, I just think that this is all sort of the same sort of timing. And with respect to gold, the success that Claude Resources, now SSR Mining, have had at the Seabee mine. And personally, I was involved in gold exploration 1990 right through to 1997. We put a small gold mine into production just to the east of our Albert Lake project. A very, very high grade, very famous Comus gold mine. Just essentially, the gold come out of there. I had a hard time keeping it out of the miners' pockets. Let's put it that way. So there's lots of unexplored areas of Saskatchewan. There's a bit of a history there. It goes back to the Saskatchewan Mining and Development Corporation, but in the interest of time, we won't get into politics.
Maybe I'll just skip slides here. And I think that, as just a brief demonstration of, we talk about the Rottenstone mine, one of the highest, if not the highest grade polymetallic, nickel copper mines in Canadian history, or in Canada at the time. You can see it here, but Ian, you just want to talk through, just wanted people again briefly to understand this is something for me and this is me taking a half step aside here. I apologize, but I came across Fathom as a retail investor and wearing my hat, looking for someone to work with that I really thought had a powerful project. And the level of kind of technical expertise that what you demonstrated, you and I obviously have a working relationship now. So it's, like I say, buyer beware in terms of my opinion now, because I work for Fathom. But I was initially drawn to this story because of the level of technical expertise and the technical ability and the amount of data collection that you've been going through. This is obviously just from the slide deck, and you're not going to capture that, the years and years of data collection and layering and analysis and collation that you've gone through yourself and with the team. But maybe just using this as a springboard, do you just want to kind of discuss, this is a geochem samples, but do you just want to discuss the level of, the data collection and then what you've gone through in terms of getting, Albert Lake here or Goshager or both to drill ready status and sort of geological mastery?
Yeah, well, you said drill targeting, and I was going to sort of go down go that direction. We the Rottenstone deposit was an outcrop, and then they mined out what they could, the 26,000 tons. And okay, well, what's going on here? What is the signature? What can we learn at Rottenstone that we can apply elsewhere in our 90,000 hectares? And we've only looked at not even 10% of the 90,000 hectares. So what signatures can we take away? Lithogeochemistry, rock geochemistry, metallurgy. Is there a footprint? Is there a signature in the soils? We were actually sampling the tops of black spruce trees. There was a guy hanging out of a helicopter and lopping off the top of a black spruce, and then we would analyze the ash after we cleaned it all up. This was Colin Dunn's, the late Colin Dunn's undertaking. And so we really threw the kitchen sink at this thing to get smarter. And to, quickly summarize the image that we're looking at here, you can see the bright magentas, and that is nickel in soil. But I just want to point out, and maybe with your cursor, Matthew, the Rottenstone location relative to our discovery that we call the Bay Island Trend. And you can see that there's some nice bright red colors nickel in soil immediately over top of what we now know is mineralized ultramafic rock that has a strike length of 300 meters. So soil geochemics is telling us something. And, you know, in hindsight, we collected these soils in 2018. We drilled out in the bay in 2021, and that was our first clue there was something going on here. So we know that this mineralization has a soil geochemical signature, and in this case, it's directly over top of it. And then we go a little bit further south down to the Trombley-Olson Nic 5 and all these bright magentas. This is, you know, 743 parts per million nickel in soils. And we now know through the drilling that we have intersected the Rottenstone host rock, and we're experiencing very high nickel tenors in this area of the Nic 5 Trombley-Olson. Rottenstone has fascinatingly high nickel tenors. And when I say nickel tenors is how much nickel in 100% sulfide. Rottenstone has 10. The intercept that we had in our hole number 77, very little sulfide, but the tenor is 10. That's a very, very good sign. So I think we've now validated this soil geochem anomaly south of the Rottenstone mine. There's something subsurface there, and we are going to find it. And you know, again, hole 77, follow-up borehole EM, things are aligning nicely in and around the Nic 5 Trombley-Olson. So, you know, again, it's just the process, the collection of data. It takes time, but you have to have this to target drill holes. And so this is all part of the process. And I'm fortunate to be working with a tremendous group of geologists and geophysicists, and this is all part of the process, and it's starting to pay dividends.
Yeah, that's I think that's part of it for me, you know, is that, you know, good science takes time. And if you, it is, I mean, it's, you know, it's not just a science experiment, because we're looking for economic viability, and we're looking to fast track the path towards achieving a deposit that would be of interest for takeovers, et cetera. But at the baseline, this is a scientific process. And so if you want reproducible results, right, you need to have high confidence data, right? So it's not just shooting blind and hitting a bullseye lucky, and then how the heck do you follow up on that? But, you know, that if you're in this industry, or if you're an avid investor, you know how much work above ground goes into producing a drill ready target, right? And again, this idea that I say that really drew me to Fathom was this commitment to data, and this commitment to doing good science, right? That so that you can have, once you make that discovery, you can follow it up knowing the signatures of what you're trying to pursue, right? Why don't we then, I'm just gonna, oh, excuse me, let's just hop down again. So kind of a greatest hits collection here for people, right? We'll try to burn through this without taking too much time. But the fundamental premise here, and I'll let Ian take over once I'm done, is that, especially with Albert Lake, but also with our Go Sugar project, is that, I mean, Albert Lake, something that high grade, there must be something huge lurking beneath the surface. And if you followed along with our story, you know, Go Sugar, we've delineated this very large playground, is the term that Ian uses, that I think works well, of you know, moderate mineralization, and we're sort of trying to put the puzzle back together and backtrack to where is the source or the feeder zone, right? And maybe, Ian, do you just want to kind of take over from there in terms of how we're trying to work backwards to find kind of this high grade core at the end of it all?
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, the record of the Go Sugar Lake deposit, drilled 1966, 1967, 1968, that's in a banker's box in somebody's basement. It's not in the Saskatchewan assessment file. So there's very, very limited data. And we've known about it. And I was in a project I was involved in 2018, you know, when somebody said, you want to write a qualifying report for a company that was optioning into this, I said, yeah, I'd be down for that. And then, you know, the first task was, okay, well, where's the deposit? And so we went out, myself and another colleague, and we went out and said, okay, well, we got to try and figure out where this is based on this one map that was available in the assessment files. And off we went. We found a bunch of casings, and we found the casing, which turned out to be drill hole I-12, where there was 290 meters of almost 0.6% nickel. And at the bottom of that intersection, there was this section of high-grade nickel, 9 meters of 2.4%. And there they did analyze for cobalt, and it was 0.14. So that was the first clue that, this project is well endowed with nickel, copper, cobalt. But again, without the historic record, we literally had to put this thing back together again. If we fast forward to February of 2023, we wanted to position our hole close to this I-12 because we needed to sample systematically the mineralization for nickel, copper, cobalt, plus the platinum group elements, plus gold. That hadn't been done properly previously. And we were fortunate to hit 58 meters of 1.5% nickel. And actually, I've got the grades here, the copper and the cobalt. The cobalt was north of 0.1, and that's very, very significant. But, so how is this high-grade mineralization occurring? What is it doing within this larger playground, the term that Matthew used, of what we now know is a mineralized intrusive. It's a gabbroic body, and it has disseminated and interstitial chalcopyrite, pentlandite, pyrrhotite, nickel, copper, cobalt. And with the work that we've done, and very, very quickly, and again, I passing the credit along to the team that I work with, we recognize now that there are 3 key events. So there was this initial intrusive, that being a norite. There was a secondary intrusive, that being the gabbro, and that had been saturated with sulfur, and therefore we have this disseminated style of mineralization within the gabbro. But this high-grade stuff that was present in I-12, that's coming in as veins or shoots. And we now know that that mineralization is carrying fragments of a rock type that is not consistent with event number 1 and event number 2. So therefore, it's coming from yet another chamber. And we think that this is going to be a large chamber, and this is going to be a chamber of massive sulfide, where we're seeing hints of it as veins, that there's, this very, very well mineralized sulfide mineralization. It's been pushed up from this feeder, and the feeder is essentially, this vent is now full of a magma that is completely saturated with sulfur, and it's very, very heavy. And we know it's going to be containing nickel, copper, cobalt, and it's kind of stuck. It's stuck in this other magma chamber that we have not got to yet. So that is the ultimate prize in our exploration going forward here at Ghost Sugar Lake. We have what we call the container rock. Our drilling is defined at a minimum strike of 230 meters. Our drilling has extended it below the historic boundaries of the Ghost Sugar Lake deposit, a minimum of 100 meters. We have a drill hole that's 400 meters off to the northeast. It's in gabbro, so now we have 700 meters of known container rock. Our guys are out there in the field right now mapping the boundaries of the container rock. I had a call last night. It goes a little bit further to the north than we knew of. Excellent. So we're going to be mapping out the gabbro, and then we know inside the gabbro we have the high-grade shoots and the veins of semi-massive to massive sulfides, and we know that they're coming from yet another source undiscovered. We'll get to it.
Yeah, kind of a 2-part play here, right? Where you have this huge, and there'll be news coming out in short order about that will potentially dramatically increases the size of that playground of the moderately graded gabbro that you talk about. That will let you talk about that later on here. But kind of a 2-part prize here, where you have these huge swaths of this kind of mid-grade nickel equivalent. But then we're also finding these, and Ian, I'll let you, the geologist, tell me where I'm wrong on this, but sort of these branches of this tree, right, where we're trying to trace these branches back down to this trunk, where that's the high grade feeder source that we're all kind of excited for and hoping to find. But of course, it's not that easy, right? I mean, the trunk can be offset. The trunk, is not necessarily just a true vertical fashion like a tree would be, right? I mean, it's not that easy, but that's kind of what we're at play here. Do you kind of agree with my allegory there, my metaphor there?
Yeah, the trunk is excellent. Yeah, yeah. In fact, I think might have been Dr. Quinton Heine that used that term, and I thought brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, a
Fingers on a
trunk.
hand, tree's
Yeah,
trunk, whatever the visual is, right? Yeah.
we're messing around in the upper part of the tree, and where's the trunk? We'll get there. We'll
Yeah.
find it.
Just in the interest of time, maybe I will just keep jumping here. So we'll transition here. Like I said, we kind of have a multi-part process here. So there's your little bit of an intro to Fathom if you're not familiar with us. News out today, right? Fathom announces receipt of new exploration permit and commencement of field activities at Ghost Sugar Lake, as Ian referenced, that boots are on the ground as we speak. I just highlighted a couple of the most critical points here, right? Up to 60 drill holes. And then most critically for us, I think, in my opinion anyway, is this camp that we now have permission for, right? Maybe do you, Ian, just want to discuss, I mean, significance of the camp permit in terms of lowering costs, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, why is this important in your eyes?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm glad you highlighted the top two bullets there, Matthew, because let me explain 60 drill holes. And when you submit this application, it's very, very important that you demonstrate as best you can. I mean, geology exploration, that's very, very fluid and dynamic and constantly changing. But you want to get an idea of what is going to be the footprint of your activity. And so I said, okay, we're going to drill 60 drill holes. So that translates to 60 individual locations on the property that we're going to be drilling holes. So they look at that as 60 footprints. That's not to say that we can't drill 3 or 4 holes from that particular location. So 60 is, 60 could be bumped up, and I would certainly notify the authorities that we're planning to drill more than 60 holes, or possibly more than 60 footprints. And then the nice thing about the now that we've got the permission for the 25-person camp, as going through the consultation process, I was asked, well, it sounds like you're being instructed to build a camp. And I said, well, exactly. That's what we want to do. We want to build this camp. And now through this process, it's become very, very apparent that the local stakeholders want us to build a camp, because that means less helicopter activity. And that was music to my ears, because this will lower our all-in cost per meter of drilling. So it just gives us tremendous flexibility. Once you have the camp, you've got to be mindful of the spring breakup and the fall freeze up, the early winter freeze up. But the rest of the time it's fair game. You can be out there in this all season camp, and you can be doing your field activities, drilling activities, and it just gives us tremendous flexibility going forward. And importantly, I think it will certainly reduce the cost per meter of drilling, because we won't be 100% reliant on the helicopter to move our drill from position A to position B. We will be in there with track-mounted vehicles to move the drill from one site to the next. And this too was encouraged by stakeholders. So this has all worked out very, very well.
Couple of things here that obviously catch my ear, right? And I think that people are listening who know the story will have caught theirs too. So to confirm then, Ian, there will be track mounted drill or drills that could be moved by tracked vehicles rather than flown for the next campaign?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. And so that, like you say, if we're looking to reduce dollars per meter, that's a big step, right? Maybe just for people listening, how much do you anticipate? Obviously, it's not a guaranteed number yet, but roughly how much will it cost to get that camp in there?
Well, we're in the process right now. I've asked for a time frame and cost. We built a similar camp at Albert Lake. We started 2018, and then we added, and by 2021 we were done. I'm going to say, Matthew, and this is I'm really just kind of pulling a magical number here, but I gotta say it's going to be somewhere between. Albert Lake probably costs us somewhere between 50 grand and $75,000, and I think if I can say 60 to $90,000 for the cost to get the camp. You got to that's bringing in. You got to fly in the lumber for the floors, and thankfully the fixed wing aircraft operator is back up in the air, which is fantastic news as well. Things are starting to align here. So there's a lot of costs. There's a lot of costs, and then of course you got to get all the tents in, and then you got to get the appliances in for the kitchen. The showers and the dries, and yeah, so it is quite a process, but let's call it 100,000. Let's just use round numbers, and hopefully we can get this all done for about 100,000 bucks.
And upfront cost, not large in the grand scheme of things when it comes to exploration, but has the downstream dividends of lowering your per meter cost, increasing the viability of your project moving forward. When we first started working together, Ian, I think you quoted me. I think it was 800 or more dollars per meter to drill, and then just conversations you and I have had, which made me kind of pleasantly surprised or made me happy, was, do you just want to inform people what was roughly the dollar per meter for our previous campaign here?
Yeah, when the very, very inaugural one, this is right through the sort of the IPO process, as we had money and we were expanding the camp and we were drilling, and it was all helicopter, and it was all done very, very quickly. And that was an expensive program. So that was getting up around, $700 a meter all in. And when I say all in, you're including, you can't do nickel exploration without the borehole EM survey crew. So you've got two guys on standby, and then they're there. And once the hole's done, they go in and do their survey. And of course, that puts the drill on standby. So there are added costs in nickel mineralization, and the biggest one being the helicopter picking up the drill and moving it, and sometimes only moving it a very, very short distance, which is really, really annoying. But it's a 2.5 hour process, and you're burning a lot of fuel, and helicopters aren't cheap. But through the Albert Lake process and then into Goshager Lake, again, kudos to our project manager, Vanessa. The most recent drilling campaign at Goshager, we're getting down 500, 550-ish. And that's flying in from Mississippi out to the Goshager Lake project. So now with camp in hand, I'd like to think that we can knock off, Doug's pushing for 200, 250. I'm going to say if we can knock off 150 to 200 bucks per meter all in by having a camp, and through time, I think, economy of scales, we'll be able to hopefully even get that down. And if I'm, to put a figure in mind, I'd like to think that our all in cost per meter of drilling is going to be in the neighborhood of 400 to 450 bucks a meter all in. That would be, I think, a really good accomplishment if we can get to that level.
Which, yeah, that's just 20% more meters for the same amount of dollars as last campaign, right? So these efficiencies, as you say, are critical for the health of a company and for the health of an exploration program to continue, right? Without, yeah, I think everybody here would agree that, if we were stuck at that 800 bucks a meter, that could be potentially crippling, right? And not so, right? We're finding these efficiencies that make it better. So why don't we, I think that, Ian, if you're okay with this, and do you have anything else you want to talk about the permitting update from today, Ian?
No, other than, I'm really looking forward to the results of the high resolution drone mag survey that we're going to be doing. That's going to be fantastic. I think that'll be that's going to map out this gabbro. I'm confident that it's going to map out the gabbro. We're going to see the magnetic gradient, the difference between what's gabbro and what isn't. With any luck, we might be able to find pockets along a footwall contact, perhaps, of where we might have a buildup of sulfides, and we know that that's going to be, magmatic sulfides if it's inside the gabbro. So yeah, very much looking forward to what comes of that survey.
Actually, one quick follow-up here, Ian, from Beagle. I'm just paraphrasing a bit, but will the camp be ready for fall drilling, or will the camp be
Oh,
ready for the next?
absolutely. Yeah. In fact, again, I mean, Saskatchewan, love the place. Talked to my expediter and he said, oh, yep, just give me the word. He's going to give me the cost first. And then he said, yep, just get going. We'll have her ready
Hmm.
ahead of the next drill program with if the stars align, we'll be the end of August into September. Absolutely.
Excellent. So there, I think that we will put a pin in kind of the Fathom Nickel conversation a bit, and an emphasis on nickel. And obviously, I mean, everybody here will be well aware. I mean, our southern neighbors, some young guns from the U of R, that's my alma mater too. That they have come up with a ridiculous hit. I didn't actually think to put up their headline, but it was 70, sorry, well, whatever, 70, was it 7 meters of 75 grams per ton gold. That's going to get obviously anybody's attention. You'll see here, I neglected to bring this up. I mean, we have ourselves these, I mean, this was, I think Northern Miner was, right, Ian, that said that this was a top 10 drill hole for 2023 for nickel. I mean, it's 58 meters of 1.5% nickel. I think that comes out to just shy of 2% nickel equivalent. I mean, yeah, that was, according to the Northern Miner, was a top 10 hit at Go Sugar, which is our current project. So yeah, I mean, there's high grade metals all over the place here, right? And I think that's a point that I want to really emphasize, is this the potential and the endowment here. There is just a lot of fruit left to be picked here. But why don't we talk about Ramp? I mean, obviously it's hard not to, right? I mean, they are kind of new to the scene out down there, and boy, it's pretty exciting. I mean, it's always good news, right? I'm always happy to see these huge new discoveries. It's exciting, it's fun. But maybe do you just want to discuss? Maybe, I mean, I have some questions here, Ian, that people have kind of put forward that we'll focus on. But I mean, any thoughts that you just want to bring to bear for people, just in terms of Ramp and Fathom and what they've done?
Well, this has been an interesting week. Uh, Exploration is a lot of fun when things like this happen, and kudos to those guys for nailing a pretty good drill hole, and thank you. Because that's garnered some attention to the Albert Lake project. And when you look at this image here, there's Ramp on the southern side, and they're not very far away from Go Sugar. So yeah, I mean, this has set off a good old fashioned staking rush, which is hasn't happened in a while. I mean, I guess lithium has garnered some attention in places like Quebec and Northern Ontario, but yeah, this is neat. And with respect to what does it do for us? I mean, we're a nickel focused company, and we're gonna stay the course. But we've got 90,000 hectares, and when we staked that 90,000 hectares, we wanted to make sure that we had a comfortable buffer around our nickel play, and we wanted to put a comfortable buffer around pretty cool uh, gravity Bouget anomaly that is west of the Rottenstone occurrence. And then to the south, again, going back to a bit of history, when I was looking at this thing back in the 1998, 1990, well, sort of 98 through 2003, at one point we had flown 75 kilometers with a fixed wing airborne MAG VLF survey. And so I wanted to, this second go around, I wanted to make sure I had enough of that I was comfortable acquiring. And then, just a little bit of a sidebar here, flying in and out of there, I don't know how many hundreds of times I've done it now, but looking out the window, and you can see these regional features, and you can see these cross-cutting structures. And I often thought to myself, I said, there very well could be gold down there. I mean, you just can't rule it out. And then getting back to, the earlier conversation about Saskatchewan being underexplored for gold. I mean, the Laurent Greenstone Belt is just immediately to the east. We're not officially in the Laurent Greenstone Belt. We're in the Rottenstone Domain, and most of the gold in Saskatchewan thus far has been identified in the Laurent Greenstone Belt. So, this is potentially a brand new thing, and it's fun. Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I mean it's a remarkable hit, and I think that a lot the question that is on a lot of people's minds is, will this cause us to change our own exploration strategy? And I'll let Ian speak to this as well, but I mean I think that it's fair to say no, right? I mean I mean 7 meters of 75 grams per ton obviously catches everybody's attention. It's caught ours, right? There's internal discussions ongoing, but I guess kind of a twofold point I want to make here. One, we don't want to be a company that kind of just chases the latest hot thing and lets the winds blow us around. And then two, do you want to be invested in a company that does so as well, right? I mean, we have no choice but to pay attention to these results, but I think we're quite comfortable, and Ian, like I say, I'll let you speak to this too. We're quite comfortable letting Ramp continue to delineate what they have down there. And if the next round of holes come back and the next campaign comes back and there's something huge, then obviously that's going to grab our attention more and more, just like it grabs the market's attention more and more. But I think that we are not at a loss for having quality projects. I mean, Go Sugar, which is our current focus right now, there's all sorts of potential there for huge discoveries just waiting for us, both kind of laterally and at depth. I guess Ian, like I say, I kind of just took the reins on this one, Ian. But do you want to speak on that idea of how much do we change based on what they've done?
Well, I mean, again, I mean, I appreciate the excitement, and everybody's literally giddy about this. I mean, I can't think of another word, but yeah, I mean, the dust is going to settle here. It's one hole. I think there's results coming from 3 additional holes that were drilled at a wholly different location on the property, and so we need to let this settle out, and then they're going to go about their process, and we're paying attention. And I know what we have on the other side of the line with respect to our gradient mag survey that we flew in 2021. And if the time is right for us to send a crew out, drop them off at a lake, and say, hey, let's go do some prospecting and see what we come up with. Yeah, we'll do it. But in the immediate future, like definitely not tomorrow, would I be sending a crew out there to start checking things out? No, we're gonna let's let the dust settle here a little bit, and then we'll have our internal strategy meetings, and come up with a plan of attack. But to the point that was made, we are very much a nickel focused company at the moment, and there's gold with our nickel, at least at the Albert Lake project, and not so much down there at Go Sugar, but who knows, that could change too.
And just for people, you've mentioned your MAG survey. Go Sugar is to the south of here. But I mean, here it is. Here's Ramp's hit. I mean, this is kind of just, I want to emphasize, I mean, I hope Ramp crushes it, right? I mean, it's exciting. I've had conversations with the two guys involved there. Like, I hope they do great. I hope that they have this fantastic new discovery. But I just think from our perspective, just to kind of echo what Ian said, it's not really our position to drop everything and go chase what they've got. We have a lot to do on our own, and we're quite happy just to sit back and see what they do, right? I mean, you can see here, and I'm not a geo, so this is just kind of a me with crayons coloring on a page kind of thing in terms of my understanding. But this delineation, this boundary between green and blue, that's what they drilled. That's their ranger, their rogue targets are up here for people that are kind of curious on this part. But you can just see, right, that I mean, obviously, if that day comes where they're 5 or 10 holes in and they've suddenly got, they keep reproducing these results, I think, yeah, we would be fools not to. But we also then, I mean, look at the prospectivity. We have a whole heck of a lot that follows that same trend, right? Ian, do you want to just, like I say, I don't want to kind of take words out of your mouth and speak from a layman's perspective incorrectly. So
Yeah, I mean, well, that's that's the first obvious reaction. Okay, well, the hole was there, and oh, all right, that's interesting. And how does that line up with what we have? And there it is. So yeah, without yeah, let's. I don't think there's much more to add there, Matthew. I mean, there's clearly a northeast lineament there. There's their Nova Bollinger look-alike. down there on the ramp side, and you can see that there's a similar feature on the Fathom Nickel side of the line as well. So, yeah, I mean this is it's all good stuff. Let's as you say, let's see what they do, and we'll be paying attention, and we'll adjust our plans accordingly.
Yeah, if we were a different company without a project, maybe you'd see us down there. But we really believe internally that there's serious meat on the bone here at Go Sugar, and we would be, yeah, it would not be behoove the best interest of that project or our investors to just switch horses midstream, right? Maybe let's just get to some ramp questions then, Ian. I mean, there's kind of a two-part. We're at the end here with questions, so please keep typing them in if you've got more. But I did make sure to get through the ones that we had from the last few days of investors contacting me. But we'll kind of do this in two parts, just as a natural extension of the ramp conversation. We'll do a couple of ramp questions, and then we'll switch over to some questions we have about back to Fathom the Nickel and Fathom Nickel, right? But I'll go through these. I mean, so Ian, has Ian ever considered the potential for a gold discovery on the Albert Lake project? You did reference, I mean, Ian, I'll say this previously, that he does have a lot of gold experience. He's discovered mines and put mines into production, as he referenced. So it's not like we are, out over our skis or beyond our abilities in house to understand what's happening here. Ian, do you want to discuss that though? Have you ever kind of looked through a gold lens at what Albert Lake might hold for that?
Well, as I said, Matthew, from a helicopter and from a twin otter, from a single otter, from a beaver, the answer is yes. And I have over there in the filing cabinet, there's all sorts of data, historic data, and yeah, no, I mean, the short answer to that is yes. Yeah, I mean, there's 90,000 hectares there. And if RAMP is being successful in defining a new type of gold mineralization, yeah, there could very well be a significant gold deposit within that 90,000 hectares.
And so I think that I'll ask it just so that it's kind of on the record, but you've already answered this to the negative, not, we're leaving the door open without committing anything right now. We're happy to be patient, but has the recent gold discovery changed your 2024 plans at all in terms of just where we put dollars or man hours?
Well, it is, you've been alluding to, focus at Go Sugar. I do have plans to put some boots on the ground in the Nick 5 Trombley Olson area because we do want to, a little bit more work with the geochem and try and, focus a little bit more in and around this, this 4 meters, that's almost 5 meters of orthoperoxenite that we intersected in hole 77. So I mean, it's in the cards. And and if this was to happen, let's just say August, and there's been some more news come out around Ramp's success, and it's something that it wouldn't be that difficult to take that same crew and drop them off and do a little bit of prospecting down that way. So I'm not going to put a firm yes on that at the moment, but it's certainly something that we could easily do. Yes.
Yeah, and I think that it's a very fluid situation, right? I mean, it's one drill hole, and again, like I want to emphasize, like I like those guys. I hope they crush it. I hope they do great. Blah blah blah. But yeah, it's a single drill hole. I don't think what anybody would appreciate if we were the kind of company to just pursue at the slightest kind of chance that sort of stuff, right? So it's a fluid situation. We have an ongoing exploration program ourselves. Like Ian just said, I mean, we have boots on the ground. If we decide, like Ian just said, I mean, it would not be much for us with an active exploration program to just kick a couple of bodies, 20 or 30 kilometers south and go do something there instead. I do want to clarify, and Ian clarified this with me as well, that where we are on this map, the geochem anomaly map I see here, there is a significant, I mean, these are large land packages, right? If you go up here, there's the Rottenstone mine up here, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's 50 kilometers as the crow flies, 40 kilometers as the crow flies right into the boundary with Ramp. So this is when we did a huge land property here too. I want people to understand that too, right? So, yeah. What would Ian need to see? And I guess as a quick follow up, and I'll get through these for the sake of it. But what would you need to see in terms of further drilling results from Ramp that would have you kind of reconsider in a more serious way?
Oh, well, you're putting me on the spot there. I would, um, and I wouldn't expect them to reveal what they have with respect to the style of mineralization and what potential model it could fall into. I just need to see more results, honestly. Again, just getting back to the one hole, I would like to see that there's gold can be tricky. I mean, gold can be nuggety, 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 and you can get a fantastic intercept and you go 12 and a half meters in front of it and 12 and a half meters behind of it. And it's like, where'd it go?
Hmm.
So it's tricky. Yeah, I'd just like to see a bit more. It's got to develop. I mean, it just has to develop into something that you can really establish as a developing story.
Yeah, and I think we're all in agreement there. And just a comment from Will, he says, "Stay the course." And I think that's the message here, right? I mean, we would be fools to not have our ears and eyes open to what's going on to the south, but I think we'd also be fools to just abandon what we have too. Go Sugar and Albert Lake. There's massive, massive potential there, and that's the job. I mean, they've hired me as IR. I'm hoping I'm trying to get that story out as much as I can too. That what we have is huge and potentially, company defining, game changing sort of thing. A couple other questions here just around Ramp, and I think that we kind of are starting to get to the end of it here. I guess maybe a good question here is how much interest have you seen from Ramp kind of come our way now, Ian? I mean, there are sources at play in terms of we have interested serious buyers that are maybe coming into the market right now as well. But have you, how much do you think that this recent discovery will help our own ability to finance in terms of interest?
Well, I mean, it's drawn eyes to the story, and I'm sure there's people that were in on the ramp, and then they suddenly went, "Oh, who are these guys to the north?" And this is where we're benefiting. This is what's great about exploration is if somebody does well, everybody does well,
Mhm.
and that's a good part and part of the fun and the thrill of the hunt, if you will. So yeah, I can't say that my phone's been ringing off the wall with a bunch of companies that suddenly want to go looking for gold on our property. Um, but it has just through awareness. It's brought people's eyeballs to the province of Saskatchewan, Ramp specifically, and then now the neighbor to the north that's got 90,000 hectares. And then you might want to pull up that Mars map. I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, yes, we grabbed a little bit of ground ourselves, and here too a little bit of history. There's a couple of nickel occurrences that were not staked, and I thought, well, geez, in light of all this gold staking, I better grab a little bit more ground to cover some of the known nickel occurrences that I knew about, which we did. And then, as I was doing this yesterday, I could see all these hexagonal blocks popping up on the screen as I was doing this. So this was a live staking rush. It was a whole lot of fun. And then I checked towards the end of the day, and now I see people have staked, south of the Churchill River. So yeah, I mean, it's I might be getting a little off course here, Matthew. Reel me back in, but um, I think it's just generated a lot of attention, and a lot of attention is good,
Mhm.
and that's good, and I think it's unanimous. We wish everybody well, because what's good for them is good for us, and seeing this kind of a staking rush is it's pretty cool. It is. It's what exploration is all about.
Well, and it's so true, right? I mean, even on everybody here knows, right? I mean, a true exciting new discovery benefits the whole sector, not to mention just the immediate neighbors, right? And so, yeah, it's a kind of full-throated. I hope they kick ass, to be blunt, right? I mean, this is, it's a bit of a 1990 sort of map here, right? But if you can see just what Ian is talking about, this is roughly our Albert Lake. And then you can, I mean, I think anywhere from, you can see my cursor, anywhere kind of from here south roughly has all been new. So you've kind of had, I mean, this is 50 kilometers in the last 2 or 3 days that has been staked by half a dozen different companies and prospectors. And so huge swaths, like 90 or 100,000 hectares in the last 3 days have gone. So yeah, there's a huge land rush going on. Like Ian said, I was on Mars too, and you can kind of see from day to day or even hour to hour, Ian's much more kind of his finger on the pulse than I do. Just watching this land kind of get gobbled up, right? Even a little pinch up here too. But yeah, no. So let's transition here again, and I do encourage people, if you have more questions about ramp. I mean, this is a Fathom Nickel presentation, but we would be, much amiss not to discuss them briefly at least. But so please if I've missed something you want to talk about regarding ramp, get your question into the comments here. But let's just switch to the final leg of this. Just a couple minutes past my goal here, but just some questions about Fathom now. So investor questions, right? So I've got this chunked into kind of 2 or 3 different baskets. First one is just regarding drill programs and exploration in general. I think this is a question from Beagle on CEO, who I always appreciate. He's a strong supporter of our company. But will we see 10 to 15,000 meters this coming drill campaign at Ghost Sugar, or is that more of a 12-month plan, or how do you see meterage holding up? And obviously, this is kind of the second half of this question is in regard to financing and if we can what we can raise to drill. But do you kind of have an internal target or internal goal about what you want to see on the ground this coming campaign, Ian?
Well, that's a good question, and I think I'm glad it's being asked because Doug and I in our marketing of the company and the marketing of the projects, and people ask, well, what do you want to do? I mean, what do you need to do to get Ghost Sugar to something that you've got X, you've got Y, you've got Z, and how many pounds of nickel have you got in there? And so our answer was, well, we need to do minimum of 10,000 meters of drilling, and let's call it 15,000 meters of drilling where we can, it's not going to be 43-101 compliant, but if somebody was, let's just put the financing thing aside for a moment. But if I had 15,000 meters of capital at my disposal right now, what would you do? And we would go out, and now that we've figured out the dynamics and the geometry, we would systematically just drill this thing and start sending down holes deeper and getting the probe to work, and be in a position where you could justify drilling holes just purely for the purpose of a borehole EM survey to give yourself a nice look around at depth. So the 10 to 15,000 meters is not a single drilling campaign. It would, I was actually doing the math on that, and we're just one drill at the moment, but that could change too. So if I typically use 60-80 meters a day in terms of, that's what helicopter supported. So this is going to change once we're on the ground. But, my point is, with keeping in mind, you got to turn out the crews, you got to give people a bit of time off. You can't drill 10,000 meters in 6 weeks. And so the answer, I think, to that question is, this is something that's going to be drawn out now that we have the permit. We're going to be doing it over the next 12 months. I think we can easily accomplish 15,000 meters over a 12-month period, and that could develop into even more meters. All to be determined.
No, excellent. And so maybe next question, I think that I won't bother asking this one, Beagle. I apologize, but the idea that we will have multiple campaigns going. He was asking about drilling on the lake in terms of maybe. Well, no. Let me just ask this question in an attempt to paraphrase. Yeah. And again, Beagle, you can tell me if I got this wrong. But when do you anticipate drills turning? I guess is maybe the question he's trying to get at fundamentally.
Our plan, Matthew, and again, the permit was the most important first step, and so now if we get cracking, and I'm going to be up at Go Sugar next weekend looking at drill core, looking forward to that.
Hmm.
Um, if we're camp construction begins the first week of July, we're in a position by mid-April that we can utilize, or I'm sorry,
Mid-August,
mid-August,
yeah.
we can utilize that camp. But there's a few things that have to fall into place here. But in a perfect scenario, yeah, we're drilling by the last week of August, the first week of September, just like we were last year.
Yeah, and so his ultimate question was if there are plans to drill on the lake, and then, like I say, he was sussing out the timing of the program.
Well,
Obviously, we're not going to be putting it out on a float out there, but do you have
no.
plans for the winter to get back on the lake?
Well, yeah, because it's interesting that that's come up, and we will post an updated corp deck on the website, and through some of the ongoing interpretation of the VTEM data, along with interpretation of our own surface geophysics, we are finding a particular zone of conductivity to the southwest of Goshager Lake, which is very intriguing. And I think it will require a hole from the ice on Goshager Lake. And that won't happen until January of 2025 at the earliest. And so if again, we're replicating the same exercise that I was talking about, defining signatures. We're replicating the same exercise at Go Sugar with geochem, geophysics, lithogeochem. The wonderful work that Dr. Peter Lightfoot has been doing with us. What do these things look like, and how many more of them are there? And there's very good evidence that Go Sugar is not by itself as well.
And you'll forgive me, Ian, if you don't know who Dr. Peter Lightfoot is, go take a look, because I think that will help in your own conviction with this story and the level of involvement he has. Would you ever consider buying? Would Fathom ever consider buying its own rig? Is that something that's cost effective, or is that not really practical?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're essentially a two-person operation. We work from home, and we try and be as lean and mean as possible. And I think, if Doug was sitting beside me right now, he'd say no, because that's just something else that he's got to enter into the financial statements. But that being said, a little bit of a history, and again, I've been so fortunate through my career meeting fantastic people. A late friend of mine, Bryant Larson, he had his own drill. And between the two of us, we worked out how Bryant was going to be my driller. And his drill was parked at Rottenstone. And when the funds came in, Bryant was the guy. And unfortunately, he's passed away. But in my good rapport with the folks in L'Orange, I've come across another individual, and I think I could replicate the same sort of situation, so that if there's any drilling contractors out there, sharpen your pencils. An ideal situation is we have a drill that stays at the property at Go Sugar, and a perfect scenario would be we do the same sort of thing up at Albert Lake. So this flying in and flying out, it doesn't happen. I mean, I've gone so far as purchasing the steel, the rods, just so they don't have to get flown in and flown out, but eventually they need to be replaced. So it's not as easy as it sounds, but I think I'm in discussions with ways where we can get that drilling cost down as much as we possibly can.
I think that's an interesting point that maybe I'll just kind of chase a rabbit here for a second. But it's sometimes feels like people are expecting Fathom. I mean, Go Sugar has 5,500 meters into it, right? We're just getting started, and I think that the level of advanced kind of knowledge that we have sometimes makes people think that we're farther ahead with our drilling than we are, right? This is very much still early days in terms of what we were actually doing with the drill rig. And so no, yeah, that idea of being able to have a permanent rig, or a rig that's just kind of permanently strapped to Go Sugar so we can have multi-season drilling, maybe accomplishes a similar thing to buying your own rig anyway. I mean, financing so we'll switch gears here. Just a couple of categories left. Just questions around financing. Obviously, I think that if anybody's following this story, I mean, this is just the frustrating reality of the junior markets for me, because I mean, every company always needs money, but obviously, I think that the results that we have is not being reflected in the market cap currently, and our struggles with that. And there are a couple of conversations we can have around that, but we need money. And I think that's what the market here is telling us in terms of kind of us being a little bit punished from a share price perspective. But maybe are there financing? Are there financing options on the table other than just a pure raise, cash raise? But would you feel comfortable with those right now? Do you think there's value in a JV or a land sale right now, or is that kind of giving away the game too cheaply?
We it's probably going to be a pretty generic answer. I mean, we're open to everything, Matthew, and we have to be. Junior exploration's it's a tough gig. We've been fortunate that we've been able to make a necessary dent. We've got two very good projects, and we've done that in a short period of time. But that window of constantly going back to the market to raise money, that's a short window. So you have to get it to the point where you start entertaining joint ventures. You start entertaining flat out sales if somebody wanted to do that. Or, I mean, there's just a lot of different potential avenues that we can go. And, we're encouraged, and I think I've said this previously, is we're encouraged that people are coming to us with interest. And people have, I mean, even, it's a little old, like some people even thrown a couple of scenarios at us that we've had to consider. So, these things are all, I mean, it's responsible on our part to listen. And it's also very, very responsible on our part to do whatever we can so that both projects are going forward. So, I think without tipping my hand, there are discussions lurking in the background. We are considering all options. And, yes, we do need to finance to do the 10 to 15,000 meters of drilling. And I'd like to think it's going to be a heck of a lot more upon success. We're going to need capital, and we're going to, that's the reality of it. And it's not an easy thing to do, particularly when we're, struggling at the market cap that we are. But that being said, we're very, very aggressively trying to change that. And hopefully that gets reflected and puts us in a little bit of a better position where we can launch yet another financing here in the very near future.
And so maybe this is a bit of a follow-up question. I think that just regarding flow through financings and I guess maybe questions around lessons learned and changing moving forward based on past events. I think that flow through financings, I find it interesting. This is me as an aside here. I apologize, but I was reading through Aussie's once upon a time. And of course, they were commenting on Canadian flow through financing and the Canadian fundraising models. And they were actually, and so as a Canadian, I mean, it's, as an investor, I love flow through, right? I mean, tax deductible, blah, blah, blah. But I also have a fairly vested interest in the companies I invest in, right? And these international investors were more negative than myself, right? That they saw it as just a liquidity event that's going to cause damage to the share price long term, because you can't help but end up with people who just see it as a tax write-off, right, or see it as a byline in their own finances, right? And I think that is part of what we're struggling with here, right? But I guess maybe that in terms of having people who are not maybe as committed to the story as we want to be or want them to be, but I guess what are your I mean, can you discuss plans moving forward in terms of kind of reducing that pinch, or in terms of just being able to what I mean, obviously knowing that we can't say anything that's material or can't say anything that's material information, but are there plans in place, or are there things that we've done to try to kind of reduce that pain, so to speak?
Yeah, well, we've caught ourselves in a, I mean, when you get down into the single digits, you suddenly introduce a brand new audience. I think let's use yesterday's close as a perfect example. you know, if Joe Blow picked up 100,000 shares at 3.5 cents, and yesterday the market was closing and it was closing near 7 cents, well, he's got himself a double. So we're unfortunately in this dangerous territory of the penny flippers. So we got to get back out of the penny flipper sort of category. And yeah, there's lessons learned. I think unfortunately the flow through market has changed. It is a tremendous opportunity to lower one's taxable income, and it does create funds for junior exploration. But we've got to be careful about this too, because even this morning I was in communication with a flow through fund, and they're still whole. So they want to work with the company. So it's ideally what we could do is try and, well, we know who the solid hands are, and then we're ideally, if we can get shares into solid groups that are behind us with the story. I mean, that's the optimal situation, and we're trying to do that. I mean, a lot of our marketing efforts are in the U.S. because you're not completely reliant on the flow through funds, but they do again create a tremendous opportunity. The province of Quebec. I mean, geez, the residents of Quebec, they buy flow through funds, and there's a long history of hanging in mining stories, and I think it benefits Quebec-based companies very, very well. Saskatchewan has very, very good incentives as well for Saskatchewan residents. So, you can use it, and you need to be, you want the shares going into the right hands. You don't want this tsunami of paper coming at you when the 4-month hold is off. So yes, we're learning, we're cognizant of where we get the money from and what the potential circumstances are, and we do our best to buffer that. But going forward, yeah, I mean, I think you constantly set out with trying to raise funds that are going to be in solid hands, people that understand what it is we're doing, and understand that in the process there's going to be ins and outs, but there's a trajectory here. There's a pathway to discovery.
And maybe on the flip side to that, I will just add in that, yeah, there is, again, being vague and, maintaining a degree of professionalism here, but there is now a blacklist, I guess you can say too, right, in terms of people that will not be invited back into future financings as well. And then also, and again, I don't want to give away too much, or I wanted to kind of be able to speak to this just kind of in a general fashion, but we do have serious players who are in the market buying, that, independent of the ramp news, that there are, conversations that we've had, that there are interested parties, well-heeled interested parties that just kind of coincidentally are coming to the market at the same time as this ramp news, which maybe partly covers up that effect. But yeah, our story there are very serious and intelligent and well-heeled people who believe in our story very seriously. And I think that Ian alludes to that when he talks about the fact that most of these flow through financing firms are still whole, right? People that believe in this story. Couple of questions left, and then I think we're done here. We're over time, so I appreciate people tuning in here. Just maybe even just two left, right? And you referenced this yourself. I think people are concerned about how many meters it's going to take to get ghost sugar to a critical mass. And I think you said it yourself that the goal here is not to get to kind of a 43101 compliant resource. That can be somebody else. And I think that this is kind of the sliding scale issue here, is that if ghost sugar continues to grow, then the number of meters required to delineate it properly continues to grow as well. But I mean, for me, nickel projects are exciting because they can re-rate so quickly when you hit it really properly. But can you just touch on this idea, Ian, about how many meters do you think we need right now, or how to get gold sugar to a state that proves its potential and proves it's kind of worthy of a takeout offer?
Yeah, I mean, that is the goal. I mean, we're I've used the term farm team. We're trying to show the big boys out there that we've got something that is going to be attractive to them. And you know, I think that entry point is getting smaller because of the global situation of critical metals, and in this case, nickel. So I like to think that that's something that we're going to benefit from in the near term. So if we, if we've got, let's speculate here. So let's just say, with this 10,000 meters of drilling, 15,000 meters of drilling, and we have a strike length of 1,000 meters, and let's just speculate that we've got our mineralized gabbro unit is 50 to 70 meters thick, and we've pushed this thing down to 500 meters below surface. That's starting to get to be a large volume of rock, and if we've done that, and we're not 300 meters apart from each other, but these drill holes are sort of 50, 60, using systematic cross sections, then you're starting to get a pretty good picture of what's below the ground. And so, again, maybe I'm just being too optimistic here, but I think if you've got something that's got nickel, it's got copper, it's got cobalt, and you've got a significant tons, and you've got a grade that's north of 0.5% nickel equivalent, I like to think that that suddenly becomes attractive. And whether that initiates that liquidity event, I have no idea. And how many meters that's going to take, well, I'd have to sit down and sort of work that out based on those dimensions I speculated on. But 15,000 meters is going to be, and the reason, historically, why am I hung up on 15,000 meters? This historic deposit at Goshagar, I think it was 17,000 meters is what I could best guess is what they did to come up with this 4.3 million tons. And so I'd like to think, okay, well, if they did that with 17,000 meters and we're a little bit more clever now, what can we do with 15,000 meters? We can, in that sort of area of the 4,000 with 15,000, we've already demonstrated that it's bigger and it's deeper. So we can, push that sort of concept further along strike. And again, I don't think I've necessarily answered the question, but 100,000 meters, no. I mean, this is not a gold project. We're not drilling this thing off at 12.5-meter centers. I mentioned the Comus gold mine, nuggets, very, very nuggety. We had to drill that thing off at 12.5-meter centers because that's the only way you get a sense of what the gold grade's going to be. You don't need to do that in a magmatic nickel sulfide thing, but so you can go about it initially, and then if there is a liquidity event, they're going to come in and do their own little bit of infilling, and then that's typically how it works. I don't think I answered that question very well, Matthew.
No, I think that your honesty and your approach is, I think that people will appreciate it regardless. Maybe a final question here, and maybe I'm going to shoehorn in some context that, there are lots of intelligent people that see a lot of similarity in the rocks between ourselves and Voisey's Bay. And that's obviously, every aspiring nickel company in Canada says they could be the next Voisey's Bay ? But I think that there's a lot of geological evidence to support that a comparison for us, right? Obviously, we have to go and find the ovoid or our version of it, but this is the size of the prize that we are trying to discover, right? And we have these geological similarities. But then the question I have then that comes from the audience here again is: are we being too conservative in our drilling, or does it pay at this point, or are you at a point now, maybe is the way to phrase it as well, where you can be more aggressive in how you explore, or do you think that is that a lesson learned in terms of being too conservative, or what do you think about that?
Well, conservative, I mean, I take a little bit of exception to that because you got to figure out what it is you're dealing with, first off. And we've accomplished that with 16 holes and 5,000 meters. Check. I think that is just absolutely tremendous if we can collectively pat ourselves on the back here. So now, yeah, and after this mag survey, and we know how big this gabbro is, we can be a little bit more aggressive and say, okay, well, look, we know how well the borehole EM works. Let's drill a fence over here. And it'd be in some respects, it would be a little bit blind drilling, but we know that if we're close, the borehole EM is going to tell us that we're close. So now that we've got the dynamics, now that we've got the geometry, now that we have an understanding of the geology and the vertical setting of these intrusives, yeah, we can start stepping out a little bit. But I don't think by any means the approach thus far has been conservative. I think it's been quite intelligent, actually. Again, collectively patting ourselves on the back here. And then now we can, with knowledge gained, we can start going at this thing. But until we have and hopefully the drone mag survey does this for us. But until we know the size of the container rock,
Mm.
how can you be aggressive? Because you're suddenly,
Mm.
I hate saying it, throwing darts. So you got to know the boundaries to play in the first place. So it's we're getting there, and we're getting there very, very quickly. And so perhaps we can be a little bit more energetic along strike, and certainly we've got to get a little bit more energetic at depth if that's indeed where this feeder might be. I mean, it could be on its side. Who knows? It could be somewhere along strike, but we'll get all the wiser with every single hole that we put down there.
Yeah, you crawl so you can walk, and you walk so you can run, right? I think, again, that goes back to that sort of very deliberate and evidence-based approach that turned me onto this project or this company in the first place. I think that's it, folks, ladies and gents. I mean, we're coming up on 90 minutes, so I appreciate your time, and I apologize for it running over, but it's just one of those things where I think that I just appreciate. I know as an investor, I always appreciate lots of detail and information to help my own investing decision making. Otherwise, I'm kind of just I'm dancing on a bit to give people that chance for one last question to come in, but I don't see it. So otherwise, yeah, Ian Fraser, Fathom Nickel, and myself, Matthew Mickleborough. Yeah, thank you everybody for showing up, and I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, stay tuned. Final thoughts to you, Ian.
Well, no, thanks. This is brilliant. I think it's something that we strive to do is get the story out there and get our, what are our plans? What are we thinking? What is our objectives here? And this is a tremendous platform to do this. And I think, Matthew, there'll be more of these in the near future, and we're going to be continuing this exploration at Goshager. There will be news forthcoming. We did some cool things with the Mall Lake drill core just not too long ago. So there might be a discussion around that in the near future. So yeah, stay tuned, folks. And thanks for the support, and thanks for the interest. And feel free to reach out to me at any point if you feel like having a chat.
No, awesome. And big, heavy wink, wink that there will be a steady flow of news coming out here in the coming weeks and months. Otherwise, yeah, no, thank you for your time, Ian. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll call it here. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.